All right, let's dive into one of the most brilliant, incredibly controversial, and just fiercely funny works in all of English literature. Jonathan Swift's A Tale of a Tub.
So, here's a wild thought for you. How can a simple story about three coats possibly explain centuries of bitter, violent religious conflict? It sounds kind of crazy, right? But that's exactly the puzzle Jonathan Swift sets for us. To even begin to unpack that, we've got to go back. We need to get inside the head of the man who wrote it and understand the absolutely chaotic world he lived in. So, let's start with Swift's world of extremes.
So who was this guy, Jonathan Swift? I mean, what kind of person decides to take on the whole world with just a pen? He was a walking contradiction, an Anglican cleric who also happened to write some of the most savage satire ever put to paper. You've probably heard of Gulliver's Travels, or the totally shocking A Modest Proposal. But no matter what he wrote, his goal was always the same: to use this sharp, almost painfully sincere irony as a weapon against human stupidity and corruption.
And believe me, he had so much to work with. Picture this. It's 1704. England is just tearing itself apart over religion. You had this furious conflict between the Catholics, the official Church of England, and all these different Protestant groups they called dissenters. And this wasn't some polite disagreement. It was intense, it was bitter, and for Swift it was a complete corruption of what faith was supposed to be about.
Now, to expose all this corruption, Swift could have written some dense, boring essay. But that wasn't his style. Nope. He decided to tell a story. A simple fable, really, that we're about to get into. The Tale of Three Coats.
Okay, so the setup is so simple it's almost genius. You've got a father on his deathbed. He gives his three sons, their names are Peter, Martin, and Jack, each a brand new coat. And these coats are perfect. Simple, but they'll last forever. He also leaves them his will, which is basically the rule book. And it has just one rule. That's it. Don't touch the coats. Never, ever change them. And of course, the sons all say, "Yeah, Dad, we promise."
But, this is Swift, so of course, it's not just about coats. This whole thing is a giant allegory. Let's break down the symbols. It's pretty straightforward, actually. The Father, well, that's God. The will, without one big rule, that's the Bible. And those simple, perfect coats, that's the big one. That's pure original Christianity. Before we humans got our hands on it and messed everything up.
So, they promised to obey, right? Well, what do you think happens next? This is where Swift really sharpens his knives. Let's see how that pure religion gets all twisted and torn.
Okay, so each brother stands for a major Christian branch at the time. First up, you've got Peter, who represents Catholicism. He gets totally obsessed with fashion and starts loading up his coat with all these fancy ribbons and tassels. Basically, a jab at what Swift saw as corrupt and empty rituals. At the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got Jack, the dissenter. He gets so fanatical about making his coat pure again that he just rips it to shreds. And then there's Martin, right there in the middle. This is Swift's own Anglican church. He tries to be moderate, carefully taking off some of the extra decorations, but he just can't bring himself to restore the coat to its simple, original state.
Now, this is super important. You might think Swift is just trashing religion here, but that's not it at all. He was a cleric, remember? He was deeply religious. What made him so furious was seeing what we, had done to faith. For him, the real enemies weren't beliefs. They were human pride, greed, and fanaticism. Those were the things that twisted something simple and pure into something unrecognizable.
But hang on, Swift wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. He looked around and saw the exact same kind of rot happening in a totally different place, the world of books, writing, and ideas. This is what he called a corrupted world of words.
Yeah, he saw this whole corrupt system. You had these authors who were all flash and no substance. They cared more about sounding smart than actually saying anything important. Then you had the critics. Oh man, he hated the critics. He saw them as parasites who didn't create anything but just fed on the work of others. And he didn't let the readers off the hook either. He blamed them for being gullible, for fueling this whole mess by chasing whatever was new and trendy.
I mean, just listen to this. He called critics creatures that live only upon the decay of others' works. Wow. He's basically calling them maggots feeding on dead art. The guy did not pull his punches, did he?
And like I said, Swift pointed the finger right back at the audience. He argued that because readers loved all that flashy, over-the-top writing, authors just kept churning out shallow stuff. Because they were obsessed with finding secret messages, the true meaning of text got completely twisted. It was this terrible feedback loop where everyone was playing a part in making literature worse.
So okay, we've got corrupted religion, corrupted literature. What's the common thread here? What was Swift's ultimate point in all of this?
Let's tie it all together and figure out his passionate plea.
For him, it all boiled down to the same thing. It didn't matter if you were in a church or a library. People were throwing away the most important stuff, common sense, moderation, just being sincere. And they were trading it all for extremism, vanity, and empty style. And that, to Swift, was the real sickness infecting society.
And what makes his writing still hit so hard is how he does it. His writing feels so direct, so honest. You can almost feel the heat coming off the page, this white-hot passion that he channels into this incredibly sharp irony. And it's all so clear and logical. It's a combo that, man, it still works just as well today. Think about it. The guy was writing this stuff over 300 years ago. But doesn't it sound familiar? Which leaves us with a pretty big question, one that's maybe more relevant now than ever. In our world of endless scrolling, filter bubbles, and constant stylistic noise, how do we choose what's real over what just looks good?